subject, you're going to be demonstrating that knowledge, demonstrating that expertise to your professor, because this is a college assignment. But you know what the real purpose of a literature review is? It's a reader service. It's something you're doing as a favor for your readers. And what are you doing? You are bringing them up to date. Have you ever had this experience where you've run into an old friend after a number of years? What's the first thing you and that old friend do? You ask each other, hey, what have you been doing all these years? Fill me in. Update me. You're doing the same thing in a literature review. You're filling them in. You're updating them. And by bringing them up to date, then you can start at the present again. You see what I'm saying? You kind of bring them along that timeline of the past, letting them know the key elements, remember the major concept, the key elements in your life, and once you're there, boom, then you can start. And that's the dividing line between the literature review and the rest of your paper or the development. You go all their ideas, the past scholars, the past researchers, boom, and then come your ideas, your present life, so to speak.
Let's suppose
Okay.
that you're writing a really important email.
So do you know actually which feature I'm going to talk about? Did you hear the keyword? Up to date. That's right. Up to date, right? Like you're feeling an old friend with the updates of yourself, right? You're feeling the researchers with the update information of the literature. So literature review should be up to date. So, for example, if you're going to write your dissertation, for example, like this year, right? So you have to maybe try to review at least some articles which were published maybe in 2018, right? Or 2019 as well, right? Okay, don't just refer to those articles which published more than 10 years ago, right? Okay, that is no good, right? Though people will see, well, you know, the first thing is the people will look at the reference. Okay, look at reference. The earliest one actually, you know, was you cited work in 2008. Too old, right? Okay, you didn't provide us with up to date, picture, right? Okay, even actually you can cite, for example, like a work which published 20 years ago. Maybe because it's a very influential work. Framework, still nobody challenged that framework, right? But this is not enough, right? Okay, you still have to maybe cite some more recent articles, particularly those empirical articles, right? Okay. So it is possible you can cite some old influential work in the past. They have to be representative, you know, a very important figure, you know, in that area. That is fine, okay. But make sure you also have to have some, you know, some up-to-date references. Okay. Yeah. So I think this is not difficult to understand, right? Okay. So these are the. So far we discussed 5 features. Do you remember what they are? Okay. Now try to recall from your mind. Okay. The first one is literature review has to be focused and relevant. Yeah, to the topic, research topic, right? And second, it has to have some organizational patterns, right? And particularly use some themes to organize your literature, right? Third, a literature review contains both summary and synthesis. Yeah, synthesis, right? The fourth, yeah, you have to indicate research gap in your literature review, right? Yeah, and the last one, the literature review has to be up to date. Okay, so not very difficult, right? It's not too. I mean, yeah, it's difficult to achieve all this. It is difficult. Okay, not difficult to understand. Okay, right? Okay. Okay. So now we discuss the key features of good literature review. You know, to understand is something, and to have the skills is something very different, right? You need lots of practice and writing. You know, even after writing for. I started doing my PhD in 2000. Let me think. Okay, I got a long PhD process. I started, I think, maybe 2002 2002. I finished in 2007. So it took me 5 years, okay? And now I've been working as an academic for 12 years. So I've been doing research for almost 20 years. I'm still sometimes, you still need a little bit struggle with literature review because you need to read a lot. I know I have the skills now, but I still have to read and synthesize. You have got the time to do literature review. Okay, still very time consuming. Okay. Now, okay, so remember, if you want to write a good literature review, you need lots of practice. Okay. Yes. So it's not something that you can do it well just in a short time. Okay, research is a lifelong career. You have to know that. Okay. Now, how to write a literature review? Here, actually, I like the idea proposed by these authors. I think one professor. Okay. Just maybe 2 or 3 years after I arrived in the university, okay, and that professor provided a workshop, and he presented these 2 authors' work to us. I found this very helpful, and okay, so I always introduce their work to students so that they understand how they can write a literature review. So actually, this author worked on qualitative studies, okay, and they also use the same metaphor. To write a good literature review is similar to write a good story. Okay. And there are certain moves you have to follow. There are certain key steps you have to do in your literature review. Okay. The move 1 is to state clearly the significance of the study. This is not difficult to understand, right? Particularly in your PhD study. Always at the beginning, you have to see the significance of your study, right? Why do you say put the significance of study as, at such an early stage?
Attract people to read.
Now, when you do research, you promise you're going to have some new discoveries, right? Okay, so this is the significance of study, right? So you have to convince people, by reading your work, what kind of benefit they will get, right? Significance of your study, right? Right? Okay. All right. To motivate people to read, to motivate. Okay. Yeah. But your expression also mean the same thing, right? But to motivate people to read, right? So. You have to, for example, describe the relevance of your work to the field, right? It's very relevant. It's very important, right? You have to do that, okay? Self-claiming, You have to signal to the audience the importance of your work, right? It's very important, okay? But you cannot say it's very important all the time. It doesn't work, right? Okay. Well, you have to say, why your work is important, right? Your work is based on blah blah's work, and you're going to, your work is going to solve some problems, right? Okay, right, okay. So significance of a study, okay. So the first, so you have to, state this at the beginning of your study, okay. Also, situate the study in literature. What does it mean? Now, based on what you already know about how to conduct review. What does this mean? Situate your study in literature. What does it mean? Actually, already you already give you some ideas when we talk about good features. Actually, that means you're kind of, by doing literature review, you summarize, you synthesize others' ideas, right? Okay, and you point out, for example, something that is maybe some limitations, right? And some perspectives that have been ignored, right, or overlooked, right? You kind of situate your study in literature, connecting your ideas to the existing literature review, right? Okay. So by doing so, you are constructing the in-text coherence. Remember, in a literature review, you have lots of sections with some subheadings. Okay, so we can think about all these within this particular section, you have a subheading, and all you wrote in that part should be coherent, right? coherent means they are connected to each other, right? Okay, you're kind of advancing your arguments, right? Okay, and point out what is missing, what people still need to make effort to solve the problem, right? Okay, and so you by construct a coherent text, you select and organizing existing research work and making connections to your own research, right? So basically, you're organizing your literature review in this step, okay? All right. So how do we do that? How do we, make a coherent, paragraph? When we try to use themes or subheadings, and also I think the most important thing is use a topic sentence. The topic sentence actually is the main idea of what you're going to say in that paragraph, right? Okay, in Chinese writing, often people will put the main idea in the end, is that right? But in English writing, you have to remember, it's kind of, it's a front-loading language. And that means the most important thing, the salient point should go at the beginning. Don't hide it in the end, okay? All right, okay, so you put it in the beginning, people will know, well, what you're going to talk about in your paragraph. What is your main argument in that paragraph, okay? Now, move 3. Problematize. This is a verb, right? The literature to make space for your study to make a contribution. This is not easy, difficult to understand, right? Do you understand the meaning of the verb problematize here? Problematize, you make a problem, but not for yourself, for literature. So that means there are still actually some problems to be solved, okay? There's still quite a lot of debates, unsolved issues, okay? You made a problem, okay, but not for yourself, for literature, so that you can justify your study and you make space, prepare, for your own study. You can make a contribution, okay? So indicating a gap in the literature to justify research, right? And we have, in the second task, I showed you some strategies how to do so, right? How to indicate a gap. But of course, before you indicate a gap, all you wrote has to be coherent, right? Okay, you can see, well, the loss of achievement in blah, 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 and then, but, blah, 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 right? Then you can indicate a research gap. It's like that, right? Okay, yeah. And move 4, foreshadow how your study addresses the problem. Do you understand the word foreshadow? But foreshadow here should be understood metaphorically, not literally. Foreshadow, I think, is a kind of a technique often people use in writing novels, right? Okay. That means you give some hints, but in doing your research, you don't just simply give hints. You have to be very explicit. You understand? Usually, I think, after this review, after you indicate a research gap, you propose a research question, right? And then perhaps you can, in your methodology, you're going to give readers some brief ideas how you're going to do in your study. For example, I'm going to propose to do a survey study, right? I'm going to survey students. That's my main methodology, to collect data. So actually, foreshadow how you address the problems often refers to the methods, research methods you're going to use to conduct your study. Okay, all right. We can use interview, right? I think Eric has already given you lots of good examples, or class observation, right? Okay. For quantitative study, you can also carry out an experiment, right? Okay, and which I'm going to show you. I think next week I'm going to focus on how you can design a questionnaire. And then the third lecture, I think I'm going to focus on how you can do an experiment, okay? So in this way, you're turning the gap into research space to solve the problem. Okay, so these are the 4 moves, okay? Right. Now, read the introduction of an article, say Appendix 3, and identify the key phrases or sentences that signal some of the 4 basic moves. Now I'll give you some hint. Not all moves are in chronological order in introduction, because I didn't make you to read the whole literature review. You only need to read introduction. Usually the introduction will capture the key information you're going to elaborate in your literature review. Okay, so perhaps not all the moves will be in chronological order in introduction, but it should be in a chronological order in real literature review. Okay, all right. So just read that part. Okay, the introduction part, Appendix 3. Okay. Again, you can do it individually. Okay, just read introduction. Okay, that part. And then you try to identify the key phrases or sentences that signal some of the 4 basic moves. Okay. Do you find difficult? Easy? Okay, all right. Did you finish? Not yet. Okay. If you finish, you can maybe discuss with your partner. Relating your research and literature. Okay. Show me what it is. So this is what you need. This is what you need. One, two, three, four, five.
I think it's indicate the research gap.
Are you sure?
This is significance. Just mention that such that they can shape that situate
Introduction. Only need introduction. Introduction. So only need read the part entitled introduction with a subhead introduction. Okay. All right. I think it's more difficult than the previous task, right? So you do need some discussion, right? Okay. Okay, you can take a look. So these two actually, are marked in yellow. Actually, are moved to situating the your research in literature, right? This is what your research is going based on, right? Do you agree or not? Yes. So L2 research often focuses on adult learners. Okay. But, this kind of learning is frequently associated with incidental learning modeled on L1 acquisition, right? Okay. And extending this notion to L2 acquisition, researchers investigate how adults, especially university students, learn vocabulary in different reading contexts, right? So actually, these are the key parts the author actually is going to focus on later in literature review. Okay, so you see introduction, you can give readers some, simple ideas, okay, of what you're going to cover in a literature review, okay? And this is a literature, this is a place where the author identifies research gap. Do you agree? However, when there has been little interest in how young learners acquire little vocabulary in reading, right? Okay, so most reading-based, studies actually are done with adult participants, but not children. Okay. What about this part? The part highlighted in yellow, in blue, what is it? Which move? Move one, actually move one, right? Okay. The significance. Such studies can shed light on young learners' L2 vocabulary acquisition, as well as inform primary school English teachers of how to make vocabulary instruction more efficient. Okay, all right. So this is significant of a study, right? Not research gap. Okay, all right. Yeah. So you can see later. You see the subheading for the first part of literature review is vocabulary acquisition through reading. So general, right? Okay. And next part is vocabulary acquisition through reading plus exercises. So be more detailed, okay? The first part just, usually, when the author cite others' work, it's all about adults, learning about adults, okay? All right. And then later, you see that? So this is the second part, okay? Above studies are involved reading plus blah, blah, involve only adults or young adults. Or young adults, I don't mean senior secondary school pupils, okay? All right? Okay, so that means what about the vast number of primary school pupils, right? This is some, kind of participants, which have been overlooked by existing studies. Okay, so indicating the research gap, right? Okay, identify one overlooked perspective. Lack of studies on young learners, right? Okay, because based on what you reviewed in the past, okay, right? Okay, yeah. You cannot make this kind of claim at the beginning, right? No, these are not convincing, right? Okay. First, you have to show them what research, what type of research has been done in the past, okay? So you only cite work on adults, right? There may be one or two. If you just ignore one or two, I don't think it's a big problem, right? Okay, right? That's a general trend, right? General trend, okay, right? And in addition, although the significance of using reading-based exercise for L2 vocabulary acquisition has been established, we have no knowledge of the effects of different types of exercises. So this kind of identify another overlooked perspective, effect of different types of reading-based exercises. So based on this kind of two research, overlooked perspectives, and then the author conducted this study, which is also this study is based on honors project conducted by a 4-year undergraduate student, bachelor's, a B.Ed student, okay? And later we co-authored and we got it published. But I completely rewrote everything. I only use the data. So actually me and my students also appear as authors. So both of us are authors, okay. At the beginning, she was the first author because she wrote everything. And then afterwards, it was rejected, so I have to rewrite everything. Okay, right. Including the analysis and the literature review, everything, okay. And then finally it got published, okay. Okay, so this is about this. The basic moves, okay. So now I think you have a kind of a big idea of how you're going to, a general idea, a simple maybe of how you're going to, organize ideas in literature review, right? You have some very clear structure. This is very important, okay? Okay, now how do you organize ideas in paragraphs in literature review, in some particular section of the literature? What is the basic principle? Each paragraph, for example, like the whole review or even each paragraph should constitute a coherent what? Story. Still story, remember story. That means all you put in one paragraph or for one section about this review has to be a coherent story, is that right? Okay. Now each paragraph represents a point of development in the argument, usually put in the topic sentence, right? A long single paragraph literature can be confusing, right? Don't, for example, write a paragraph of at least 1 page long. It's not good. Try to use paragraphs, okay? Don't put all the ideas together. That would be very confusing, I think as novice researchers, when it's difficult for you to organize or write something in a coherent way, try to use paragraphs, okay? Don't use a long paragraph, okay? in the past, some student writers, for example, those students who did honors project, they write a literature review maybe just of like 1 page or 2 page long, or 1 paragraph. It's very confusing, Nobody's going to read that, right? Okay, you know that, okay, yeah. So the story is developed through statements made about references. The trick thing is you don't just write by yourself, right? You have to write based on others' work. You have to cite others' work, right? So the story is developed through statements made about references. That means you're citing others' work, okay? Well, even if you delete someone's words, the citation, the story still makes sense. So what does it mean? It means actually, although you're citing others' words, you're using others' words to telling your story. You understand? So even if you delete a citation, it still makes sense. You just simply use others' work to reinforce the point, to enhance the point you're going to make. All right? So that's why, doing this review, you're going to, synthesize your own ideas, right? I mean, integrate everything into a whole, right? Okay. However, when you cite others' work, make sure you don't distort others' ideas. Well, when it comes to journal publication, if you distort others' ideas, and unfortunately your article is reviewed by the author, you're going to get reject. A sharp reject. Authors will be angry. Okay, try not distort ideas. Okay, but again, there's lots of skills you need to learn, right? Okay. So you have to be very skillful, right? Okay. So don't use even you don't like some ideas. You don't say the ideas you don't use very strong words, right? You understand what I mean? You don't criticize others' work, in a very open way, right? And then the authors will be angry if you read the article, right? Okay. So now we come to another key, important strategy is how do you report, literature by using key verbs, okay? So how do you cite others' work? Basically, you use verbs. Do you agree? You use verbs to cite others' work, right? Okay. So reporting verbs are very important. Okay. So what kind of reporting verbs do we have? Some reporting verbs actually, concern about how you're going to make some claims, right? You make claims, okay? When you make claims, it's a bit strong, right? Okay? Or you can argue for a case. When you argue for a case, perhaps it means there are some debates, right? There's some debates, right? Okay. Or sometimes you can just present some established findings. I think this is easy, right? Established findings that usually nobody will challenge, right? So already, so we're quite sure it's like that. Okay. Or you can draw conclusions, right? Okay. One thing you have to remember is the choice of the reporting verbs actually will tell readers your attitude towards the issue problem being discussed, right? Depends what kind of verbs you use, right? Okay. So we have to be very careful in selecting what kind of verbs we're going to use. Okay. So I'm going to usually, to make things simple, I just, summarized 3 groups of verbs for you, okay? Sometimes you can make a point to develop or justify an argument. For example, like you can use this holds the view, Smith, blah, 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 holds the view. Okay? Actually, in this case, this is your view as well, but you're simply using others' words. To make people believe, well, this is this point actually is standable, right? Okay, it's valid. Okay, it's not something just created by yourself, right? Actually, based on others' work, others also hold the view, blah blah blah, right? Okay, you're just trying to, develop or justify an argument. Okay. sometimes maybe you would like to draw reader's attention to a particular point, so you can use like insists. So that means this is important. It might be a key point, right? You would like to emphasize in your writing, right? Okay. Or sometimes you would like to make a position to support or to be against other researchers. For example, however, Wu and Lu support or reject the idea. So if you say I reject the idea, you don't say I reject the idea. It's other people reject the idea, right? But actually, perhaps it also means you reject the idea, right? Okay, you understand what I mean? Okay. Okay, now.